Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. It's just me today, so I will be kind of talking to myself. Today we're going to be talking about, some of my favorite books, book recommendations, mini reviews, small reviews of the books that I like, in case you're looking for something to read. So, I guess to start off with, some of my favorite books growing up that I just really vividly remember reading. First of all, I guess would be Lord of the Rings. That was always my go-to book. Whenever someone asked me what my favorite book was, it was Lord of the Rings. And so, I don't know, that one was just, a very special book. I know it's very long and very boring, and I've tried, well, it's not very boring. That sounds bad because it's my favorite book, one of my favorite books. But I listened to it. I didn't read it at the time. And so that helped a lot because I know I've tried to reread it, and I've read like the first third of the Fellowship of the Ring like 5 times on my own, because then I just sort of, I put it down and I don't get back to it. And that's kind of, I've struggled with reading books lately because I just read the first bit and then I don't get back to it because I don't have a lot of time, or I don't feel like reading in my free time. But anyway, that's beside the point. Lord of the Rings would be my probably original first favorite book. And then kind of along the same lines would be the Chronicles of Narnia, which I also haven't read in a long time, but those are just books that I just really loved when I was younger. I loved kind of, the fantastical aspect of them. And I really liked, I think a lot of the books that I like just, they have like a clear message, a clear meaning, and a lot of times symbolism. And I just really appreciate that in books because then it's stuff that can be applied, and it's not speaking directly to you, but these things can be interpreted and kind of applied to your own life and things you're going through in different ways. And that honestly is one of the main things. If I have a book I like, oftentimes it's because of that kind of thing, if that makes any sense. But I guess another book series that I also was obsessed with when I was little or younger was the Percy Jackson series. And so that I have tried to revisit and read again, because a lot of times I will read books I like again. But Percy Jackson series, it was good when I read it, but I don't think I'm going to be reading it again. I reread it once, I think the first 2 series. And then it was just too much after that. So the first series, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and then the Heroes of Olympus series, I enjoyed those at the time. But then the author just kind of went, I don't know. He just took on too much. He said he was going to be done writing about Percy Jackson, and then he continued writing about Percy Jackson, and I think it just became kind of tired, and just kind of, I guess when writing, it's kind of like when a series goes on too long and they're only writing the series because it did well and not because they necessarily still have a passion for the story. I think that can kind of just, kill everything. And so that's kind of why I didn't continue, because it just seemed like a lot of the same stuff being used over and over again. Like it was just all recycled stuff used in a different way. So it looked a little different, but underneath it was all the same. So, but that's just a little bit of critiquing on that series. But I really enjoyed it when I first read it, and the second time I read it was fun too. But they were funny, and they're fun to read. I liked them. And then I guess moving a little when I was a little bit older, I don't know, maybe like 13, 14, 15, I don't know. I really enjoyed Ranger's Apprentice and the Chronicles of Prydain, which actually are very similar to the Chronicles of Narnia, but they were good, the Chronicles of Prydain. And Ranger's Apprentice was just good, so I highly recommend that if you like, there's all kind of the same type of book. So if you like, I guess, like fantasy adventure kind of thing, a lot of those books that I liked early on are kind of the same sort of genre and same type of book, which is nice. And And then this is a book series that I've been meaning to read again, is the Ascendance trilogy, which it's no longer a trilogy. I was informed that a 4th book has come out, and I need to read that. And apparently there's going to be another book coming out, so it can no longer be called a trilogy anymore. I don't know what happened to that, but I guess there are more books now. But that was a really good series, and so the ones I've read are The False Prince, The Runaway King, and The Shadow Throne, and those are by Jennifer A. Nielsen, I believe. And those were just really good. I enjoyed those because, from what I remember, and I also just forget about books a lot after I've read them. I haven't looked at them in a long time, but this series I just vividly remember really liking, especially because the characters just went through so much, at least from what I can remember, and because there's always, I don't know, when writing and when learning about writing and stuff like that, people would always say you got to bring the characters to the lowest point, kind of thing, kind of to rock bottom. And of all the book series I've read, that is one of the series in which they were really brought to rock bottom. But they ended up, well, I don't know. It was good, and I just really admired how the author did that, and still managed to bring the characters out of it, even though there seemed like there was no way out of those situations. So I just really admired that in those books. So I enjoyed them, and I also. So I enjoyed reading them, and I also admired how the author wrote them. So that was just a cool series. And then I have on my list right here The Voyages of the Legend, which is actually, it was a self-published series. And I know sometimes self-publishing can be a little iffy. Like, you don't really know what you're going to get if it's a self-published thing, at least in my opinion. It's not necessarily true, but that's just kind of where my mind goes. I'm probably less likely to buy something that's been self-published than something that's been traditionally published. But also from my experience, I have learned that just because something is traditionally published does not mean it is not trash. Because I've read my fair share of really crappy books that have been traditionally published. I will not name them, but I don't know. I've been surprised. Like, how did this get published when this one was not? Anyway. But that's my little rant about that. But yeah, the Voyages of the Legend were very good. Again, they're a very meaningful series. And I've read... That was another series that I've read several times. And there's 4 books. The first one is The Illuminators Gift. And then I forget what the other 3 are called, but I can picture their covers on my bookshelf. And so... yeah, I don't know. The author, too, I got to meet her, and she was really sweet. And so, yeah, I don't know. Those books are just very special to me. Yeah. And then, let's see. Oh, yeah. Next on the list is Once Upon a Marigold, which I've also read several times. Okay, a lot of these books I have read several times. And that was just it's a very light book. It's definitely a lot of these are like more, not children's books, but kind of not young adult books quite. Some of them are. This one is more of a younger audience, but it was so funny. And it was so, like, it was very funny. It was very bright and cheerful, but I mean, it wasn't happy all the way through. But it was just sort of a basic fairy tale kind of thing. But it also kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It was good. And it made me happy. I guess I would say that's one of my comfort books, I guess. And I haven't read it in a long time. I kind of forgot about it. But yeah, I don't know. It was a fun book. And I'm trying to remember the author. I think Jean Ferris. Yeah. But anyway, that would just be a super, very light, very quick, very easy read because it is aimed at a younger audience. But I thought it was very sweet, so. And then we have on the list A Series of Unfortunate Events, which I read a lot more recently than some of these other ones, actually, although they are more also aimed at a younger audience. But one thing I really appreciate is when children's books can be appreciated by an adult audience. And I think that's a really, I guess, something to strive for. Even though you're writing for a children's audience, the themes are still, I guess, okay, let me rephrase that. When writing children's books, do not write down to kids. because although the themes may be presented in a more relatable way to kids, when you can reread a kid's book and still appreciate it and still learn things from it as, I don't know, like a young adult or as an adult, I think that is a real sign of skilled authoring, I guess. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. But yeah. And I think that's kind of like with the Percy Jackson books I was talking about earlier, how I enjoyed them at the time, but I went back and they had kind of lost their charm. Like, they were still funny, but they were definitely aimed at a younger audience. And so whereas some of these other books, they're the age group that they're selling to is younger, but it can still be understood and appreciated and meaningful to older audiences as well. So I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to say there. So I liked A Series of Unfortunate Events. It was very, very different from the genres that I'm used to reading. Because, I mean, literally all of these other books have been like fantasy or adventure kind of things. And A Series of Unfortunate Events, I don't know what genre it is, but it is neither of those. I guess it has fantastical elements to it, but it's more like set real world, but with, I don't know, fictional elements and stuff like that. And it just has such a unique style of writing. And I didn't actually like the first book very much, but one of my friends really liked the book, so I kept reading them, and I grew kind of accustomed to the style and the tone, because the tone is very different too. It's very, very not depressing, but it's just very it's very solemn, but it's very deadpan, because there's a lot of funny stuff in there, in my opinion, but it's all very deadpan humor, which also, in my opinion, is incredible to be able to translate deadpan humor into a book and have the reader understand it, because, yeah, I don't know, I think that's really neat. And there was a lot of symbolism in those books, especially towards the end. I really liked the 12th book, which is the second to last book, The Penultimate Peril, and the final book, titled The End, was also, I don't know, I really liked those two, because I felt like they had a lot of substance to them going on kind of beneath the surface as well. And so, yeah, I don't know. And then we're on to the next section. So I have these sort of divided up by section. These are, I guess, slightly older reading range. Yeah, older reading range. Rebecca Ross is one of my favorite authors right now. And so she's written various books. I won't get as deep into them, but she's written The Queen's Rising, The Queen's Resistance, which is a duology. And then she wrote Sisters of Sword and Song, which was very good as well. And Dreams Lie Beneath, which is the most recent one I've read. I read that at the beginning of this year, I think, over, December and January. I think I finished it in December. And then she has come out with a more recent one, which I have been waiting to receive in the mail for like 3 months now, but that's a whole nother story. It's coming. But so, and she's working on another. She's just like turning the books out so rapidly, and it's incredible because I love how she writes. I love her word choice. It's more, I guess, literary style. Just her wording and her descriptions are very rich and vivid and very pretty to read. And I don't know, I just like her stories too, so that's that's another bonus. But yeah, so I like Rebecca Ross. She's probably my favorite current author. So, highly recommend her books. They're also fantasy adventure, back to that genre again. But like, I don't know how better to describe that, because when I think fantasy, I think of like magic and fairies and stuff like that, but it's not that kind of fantasy. It's just like, you know, fictional, fantastical world, but it's not necessarily, the plot isn't necessarily driven by magic. Like maybe magic exists in the world, but it's more adventure set in sort of a fantastical, fictional, medieval-y world. So that's the best I can describe it. And then we have Beauty by Robin McKinley, which is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. And I read it a long time ago, and then I re-listened to it I think also in December. And I really liked that one. I like retelling. I don't know. Not all. I don't always like retellings of fairy tales. That was one of the really bad books that I read, was a retelling of a fairy tale. But this one was very good. And again, she also just has a very similar style of writing to Rebecca Ross. Robin McKinley does, in that it's very descriptive, and it's a little bit slow, but I really enjoyed the writing, so that wasn't a big deal. So I recommend that one. And then, the Iliad, which I was forced to read in high school for one of my classes, but I really liked it, and I've been meaning to read it again ever since then. I haven't gotten around to it just yet, but hopefully in the near future I can get back to it. I can't tell you how many books I've been meaning to reread, but yeah, the Iliad. I preferred the Iliad to the Odyssey, because I didn't like Odysseus very much, so I didn't like the stories in the Odyssey were cool, but I liked the characters in the Iliad a lot better than Odysseus. I don't know, I liked Hector and Patroclus. I remember that my copy of the book spelled a bunch of people's names differently. So I think in my book there were the two Aiases. They had the same names, but I think in other versions of the book, like other translations, it's Ajax. But anyway, I like those characters. So there's just a lot of characters in the Iliad that I liked, and just little moments. I know most of the book is like gore and war and stuff like that, but there are a lot of little moments, and I liked how the characters interacted with each other, and it just showed, I guess, the relationships and how they were dealing. And I liked how it looked at both sides of the war, and there wasn't necessarily a good guy and a bad guy. So I don't know, I really liked that book. And then we have Salt to the Sea next on the list, which I forget this author's name. But that's okay. You just look up Salt to the Sea, and it's historical fiction. And for whatever reason, I find it very difficult to find historical fiction or modern historical fiction, like written now, that I like, because it all just feels like it's so forced a lot of the times. Like they're like, oh yes, they'll be defining all these words for you, and I don't know. It just feels like they're writing about history instead of you experiencing the history. It feels like you're reading about them, writing about it, instead of just like being there in the moment with the characters and experiencing the history, kind of. So, but I thought that this book, Salt to Sea, what's it about? Okay, this is another. Was it World War I or World War II? My mind wants to say World War II, but I'm not convinced. I don't know. I always think World War II, but it's okay. Maybe it was World War I. It was one of the World Wars. But anyway, so that was a really good book. It was really sad. It was very sad. It was kind of depressing, but I really liked it. And again, it was very, very it was a very character-driven book, and I really like character-driven books. So I don't know. I just really admired this author's writing, if I can ever remember her name. Next, we have The Outsiders, which I think a lot of people were forced to read for school. I never read it in high school, or I didn't read it until college, but I really liked it. It was in the class, we never really got into discussing it, so I don't think I finished it during the school year, but I finished it in the summer. And so the fact I kept reading a school book for the summer, that's very good. So I think a lot of people really like this one, so I don't think that's like a unique opinion or anything. It's very good. Also, for the life of me, I can't remember that author's name, so help me. But it's a very well-known book, I guess. And so, I don't know. I liked that one. It was also very sad, but it was very good. And then now, okay, we're on to the last 3 books. So, yeah. So The Moon by Night. So these, I don't know, these are some of my top 3 books. I feel like I have a couple others, but The Moon by Night by Madeleine L'engle is my all-time favorite book. And it is the second book in her series, the Austen Family Chronicles, and it's very much a day in the life kind of story, which is not my traditional kind of book. I mean, I'll read those, but they're not usually like my favorite books. But like I said at the beginning, it's very, very meaningful. And every time I have reread it, and I've been rereading it for like the past 2 years, no, past like year and a half, and it's been very slow going. But every time I read it, I just feel like I get something new from it, and it always applies to whatever situation I'm going through at the time, which is so weird because it's been very different situations, and so it just follows. It asks a lot of questions. The main character, Vicky, the whole book, she's asking questions about like I don't know, it's just kind of a generic question, but like why do bad things happen to good people? So that's kind of the premise of what she's struggling with. But when you break it down and go into detail with her story, it becomes very layered, and I don't know. It's just such a good book. I suck at describing books, but I don't know, 10 out of 10. I love that book, and I will continue to reread it for the rest of my life because it's just so good. So, and that series is also good. That's my favorite in the series. The third book is really weird. It's called The Young Unicorns. It's very bizarre. It's very different from the rest of the books. All the other books are written from Vicky's perspective and in the first person. And then The Young Unicorns, it was written in third person, and it was not from her perspective. And so I don't know, it was just so bizarre. I feel like it should have been a book of its own and not listed within that series, because it kind of disconnected you from Vicky. It kind of pulled you out of her world, and it was focused on these two other characters because during The Moon by Night, they're moving, they're in the process of moving, and The Young Unicorns just kind of drops you into I think they're in New York, where they have just moved. And it doesn't really give you an introduction really to when they moved, and it's all this like underground stuff with like, I don't know, it was really weird. It was really weird. I didn't know what I was reading. But other than that one, the two books that followed that one, they were back in Vicky's perspective, back kind of like to the normal day in the life kind of thing. So, but yeah, The Moon by Night, love that book. And then second to last, we have Stargirl, which is by Jerry Spinelli, and I think some people had to read that in school. And this is one of the books where if I had read it any earlier than I had read it, I just remember thinking this after I finished it, but if I had read it any earlier than I had read it, I don't think it would have meant as much to me. But also another sad book, but it's a very sweet book, and I don't know. I'm not going to try and describe it. I know it's a movie. I know they made a movie out of it. I've never watched the movie. I refuse to watch the movie. And I am not usually a stickler about books being made into movies. But this book, Stargirl, was just so important to me that I just did not want to break the image in my head of it. And so, because yeah, usually I'm perfectly fine. Like, even if a movie gets a book totally wrong, it doesn't usually bother me that much. But Stargirl was just very, very meaningful and very special. So, and even I tried to watch the trailer. I couldn't even watch the trailer for it. I just started crying. I was like, no, this is not the book that I remember. And also they were like in middle school or something in the movie. At least that's what it looked like. And I was pretty sure they were in high school in the book. So that was also weird, but that's a tangent. And then lastly, we have Walking on Water by Madeleine L'engle. And this is the only book on my list that is not fiction. It is nonfiction. It is Madeleine L'engle. Also, she's, if you recognize her name, the one who wrote The Moon by Night that I was just talking about. And it's basically her thoughts on writing and her process on writing. And it took me like 2 years to read this book, but I was obsessed with it. And that's why I say I'm a walking advertisement for this book, because I would not stop talking about it. Well, I would, but it would come up a lot when I talked sometimes in certain situations. But anyway, yeah, it was an incredible book, and it just really reframed and helped shape my idea of the creative process, and just kind of recognizing what a gift the ability to create is, and like just be able to, regardless of what medium you're using, whether it's like words or art or like photos or video, to be able to look at something or think of something even, and I don't know, just make make something out of nothing, kind of. It's just such a cool concept, and it's really neat that we as humans have the ability to participate in things like that, and looking into like chaotic situations or writing chaotic stories with chaotic characters and turning it into something that makes sense in the end. And I don't know, I just think that's really cool, and I think that book just really helped me recognize it and sort of just, like I said, reframe my perspective on creating things and how important it is to treat that gift well, or use it well, and not use it haphazardly, and just strive to create things with intention, and not because you can, and not because something sells. And I think, again, that's why a lot of the books I like have kind of that foundation of like meaning to them. And there's nothing wrong with fun books. Like some of the books I listed were just basically fun books, but I just really, the ones that really have impacted me are the ones that are just like they have substance, they have intention, and the authors have clearly used their ability to create in a good way. So, and that brings me to the end of my list of favorite books. There are many, many more books that I have liked and enjoyed, but those are the top few. I would say few, but there are quite a few on this list. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I didn't list that one. Another one was the Wing Feather Saga, which is also kind of a kid's book, but I like that one as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 listed here, not counting like individual books within series, but yeah. So those are my top favorite books, I guess, recommendations if you like those genres. And even if you don't like those genres, I encourage you to give some of them a try. So, but yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.